Have you ever just wanted to relax on the porch on a summer's day and watch 70 trains go by? Today on the Roundhouse, we are talking to the innkeeper of the Station Inn in Crescent, Pennsylvania. All aboard!
In days past, the Roundhouse was where the railroad worker united with the steam locomotive, each to prepare for the journey ahead. Today, it's where we examine the history, the industry, the machines, the hobby, and the passion behind railroading. News, interviews, stories, and more. So climb aboard. This is the Roundhouse.
Welcome to the Roundhouse. I'm your host, Nick Kozarek, and this is episode number 44 of our Trains and Railroading podcast, where we're talking about everything in the industry and the hobby. You know how it is, you name it, and we discuss it. Today, we are talking to Tom Davis. He's the innkeeper of the Station Inn in Crescent, Pennsylvania, along the Norfolk Southern Pittsburgh line, which is a very busy main line. In fact, I had the opportunity to visit with him in person, so this interview was recorded right on the front porch with a perfect view of the tracks. Our guest today is the innkeeper for one of the most popular inns along the Norfolk Southern Pittsburgh line, which, as you guys know, Altoona, Horseshoe Curve, many attractions around here, including the Station Inn here in Crescent, Pennsylvania. Please welcome to the Roundhouse, innkeeper Tom Davis.
Hi, Nick.
How long have you been the innkeeper here?
22 years.
22 years. Tell us about the history of the inn. How did it come into being?
The inn's 150 years old. It was built as an economy hotel for vacationers in the late 1860s. At the time, right after the Civil War, there were a lot of resort hotels in the area. There were several in Ebensburg. Crescent had 4 or 5, and of course the most well-known in those days was the Mountain House. And people came to Crescent to escape the heat in Pittsburgh. This was a vacation spot for people from Pittsburgh. They hopped on the train, came to Crescent, spent a week or two with their families here because the weather here was usually cooler and the air was clearer than the air in Pittsburgh.
Besides the fact that the air was clear, because obviously Pittsburgh, being a steel town in those days, was very smoggy, were there other attractions that were bringing people to Crescent specifically, any resorts or anything of that nature? Or was it just sort of
No, not very much. People just came here and really did nothing. They just relaxed. At the Mountain House, there were springs, mineral springs, several doctors who attended people who had medical problems and thought that they would be better attended here. But other than that, people just came here relaxed. There wasn't a ball team that I know about. There weren't any sports teams in town. People just came here, they hiked, they got out, they walked around, but there wasn't an awful lot of activity. Not like going to the ocean and getting up every day and going out to bathe in the ocean.
When did you first come to Crescent, and what attracted you to it?
Just to do what I came to Crescent to do what I'm doing now. And I was looking for a place to operate a bed and breakfast by a railroad track. And I figured that there were enough rail fans around that if I had a nice place by a busy railroad, people would like to stay there. And it's turned out that I was correct.
every time I look at lists of places you have to go when rail fanning Norfolk Southern, this is chief among them. And now having stayed here, I can say that they're quite correct. So did you grow up with trains and railroads before you moved to Crescent?
Yeah. My father was a dining car steward on the B&O, and I traveled a lot with him. And when school was out in the summertime, I'd go to Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, traveling with my father on the train. And it was great. I loved it as a little kid. Wonderful.
When you see what rail traffic is like today, here we are sitting on the front porch of the inn, and you get to see the rail traffic and compare it to what it was like. What differences do you see?
Well, of course, when I was a little kid, it was all steam. There were a couple of diesel switchers here and there, but it was all steam. That, of course, is a big change that a lot of writers have published books about. The trains today are much longer. The whole operation is much more sophisticated than it was 50, 60 years ago. That's all. I mean, it's a matter of growth for the big railroads and withering for the short lines, for the smaller parts of a lot of operations. Trains have doubled in length. They've increased greatly in tonnage, a lot more tonnage through here today than at any time, even during the Second World War, when this railroad was really, really banging out a lot of traffic, moving a lot of freight. Today they're moving more. Today there's more tonnage going through Crescent than there was at any time in the past.
What led you to become an innkeeper? Did you have a previous career in hospitality? What was it that attracted you to the idea of owning a bed and breakfast?
Well, ages ago, traveling with my father, I would always see neat houses, neat places along the tracks. And as a little kid, I'd say, boy, it would be neat to live there. It'd be great to live in a house like that and watch the trains go by. That's pretty simple, pretty basic. It just, the idea always appealed to me. That was there, and then I just thought, if I could find a nice place, there might be enough rail fans who would want to stay there, and I could operate a profitable bed and breakfast. That's it.
Walk us through the experience that somebody has when they come to spend a couple nights here.
They have to make their own plans, their own experience. Everybody coming here has different objectives. Some of them want to do photography. Some just want to sit here and watch trains. Some want to get out and watch trains, go to the curve, go over to Cassandra, go to South Fork. They want to chase. Others are more content to visit one or two places and stay there for a long period of time. And it's hard to really explain everything that there is in a person's mind when he arrives here, but they arrive here to watch trains and to photograph them. And if you're a rail fan, you understand that. If you're not a rail fan, you're inclined to say, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, that could be the case. But it's nice to be in an area of communities where we rail fans are acknowledged, because usually we're just kind of in the background of things, but because rail fanning is a significant part of the tourism here, it's nice to go into the restaurants and diners and see photos of Pennsy steam locomotives.
Yeah.
It gives it a whole other flavor. And with the rooms that you have here, you've given each of them a separate railroad theme, which I think is really nifty. What was the idea behind that? How do you go about giving each room a theme?
A lot of people with bed and breakfasts name their rooms. Their rooms are the hyacinth room, the daisy room. Other people name their rooms after famous racehorses. Some people name their rooms after their children. Some people just number their rooms. And I thought, well, I would name my rooms after railroads.
Of the railroads that you've chosen, you have, let's see, the Erie, the Pennsylvania, the Reading, the B&O, just to name a few. Do you have a personal favorite amongst those?
Well, my favorite railroad was the B&O.
So then that would be your favorite room
Yeah.
as well. Here we are sitting on the porch, which it's really convenient how this gives you such a wide and perfect view of the tracks. Was the building constructed this way with this long porch facing the tracks already, or was that something that had to be modified?
No, the building always had this big front porch. Years ago, every town had hotels near the railroad station and hotels downtown. Every town, you go along the PRR from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh, every town where the train stopped, and all the trains didn't stop in all the towns, but every town where the train stopped to throw off mail, pick up passengers going to larger cities, every little town had hotels near the railroad. Now, most of those places are gone. The buildings have been knocked down. They're now supermarket parking lots. They're other things. The hotels are gone. This is a survivor. This is one of the very few remaining active hotels between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. A place where you can just go that's nice, a decent accommodation. The small hotels have simply gone the way of what? They've gone the way of the steam engine. Everything's different.
So with this sort of carrying on the tradition of the last railroad inns, what experience do you think that provides people who visit who might otherwise stay at a chain hotel?
Bed and breakfasts are quite different from chain motels, obviously. And I really can't describe it. And until you've stayed at a bed and breakfast, you can't really understand. It's just another place to put your head. But it's not cookie cutter, and it's its own self. And I had a guest from Australia a couple of years ago say, well, it's not like the Holiday Inn. And he said the Holiday Inn, stay in 2 Holiday Inns in California and stay in another one in Ohio, and they're all the same. When he stays here, it's a different experience. It's not the same. You go into the rooms, you don't see the same sorts of art or decoration or whatever on the walls that you saw in the motel 800 miles away. We're not cookie cutter by any stretch of the imagination, and the place is 150 years old. There are not very many 150-year-old motels, so we're quite different.
You speak of the decorations that you have. The dining room is full of beautiful pieces of photography and paintings. And then here we are on the porch, and you have a wall of these license plates with different states and different locomotive numbers on them. We've got an Ohio plate with Penn Central GP35, a Wisconsin plate with Sioux SD60. How did you end up collecting these guys?
We put a few, had a couple of them that people just wanted to give me. I have an old license plate. I have an old SD40 license plate from New York or from Ohio. I'm going to give it to you. And I said, well, fine. If you give it to me, I'll find a way to display it. And then when we built the ski lockers here, we had all this space. I just decided to start taking these license plates and putting them on the wall, and when my guests saw the license plates starting to build up, they'd bring me their unique license plate, and if it was railroad related, it would wind up on the wall. We have a few license plates over there that aren't railroad related, but they're there because they're there. No real reason for it, but most of them are directly related to the railroad.
Now, being that you spend so much time here, you see average about 70 trains a day, and most of those are your typical black and white Norfolk Southern power. What types of trains go by here that stick out in your mind? What are the ones that'll get you to turn your head?
Well, the office car train, the circus train. On Monday, you've got the high and wide moves, dimensional loads. Every now and then you will get a solid long train of farm equipment. Nothing but farm equipment headed for Baltimore for export. You know, those things are unique. I mean, they're you don't see them every day. And you'll see some of the farm equipment trains maybe once every 2 or 3 months. They're not frequent. They get a lot of attention. That and military equipment, rebuilt Humvees and stuff like that headed east. And the railroad always has had more traffic, more tonnage going east than west. Right there on track 1, very close to the station inn.
You said that you originally lived in New York City. What was your career there? And would you consider yourself a city person or a country person? Is that what part of what brought you to Crescent?
I've never, except for a couple of jobs in eastern Kentucky, I've never lived in rural areas. I've always lived in metropolitan areas. And this is just a different phase of my life. This is and just different from what I've done before.
You mentioned that you had guests come all the way from Australia. It sounds like people are willing to come from all around the world just to rail fan here and to stay here at the inn?
Well, when people are in from the UK, they're rail fanning all over the US. But this is one of the places that a lot of the rail fans from Europe have on their must list, which is, you know, on the rail fan trip to the US, we're going to have to stop at the station inn for a few days. A lot of people just put that on their list and they stop here, and it's very nice, very, very good to have rail fans from outside the US.
When you look at the future of the inn, right now it seems to me that things are really comfortable. You've got the space that you need to work with, you have the rooms that you need. So what are the types of projects that you work on around here? Redecorating or adding new storage spaces? What are the kinds of things that you map out as far as projects here?
Well, every winter is a time for doing catch-up repairs. Not catch-up, it's stay ahead. We stay ahead of stuff like replacing carpets and redecorating rooms and that kind of thing. We're always doing something each winter. Past winter was bathroom refinishing, just replacing fixtures and showers and that kind of thing, just to stay ahead of the game. I do not want to add rooms. I don't want the place to be any bigger, because if it gets bigger, it gets less personal. We have more people, too many people. And that sounds strange coming from somebody who runs a lodging property, but we added a room about 3 years ago, and it's a very nice room, but it can accommodate comfortably 6 people. Well, that's 6 more people for breakfast. It's 6 more people jammed onto the front porch in the evening, and we've reached our capacity, I think you might say. Don't want to get any bigger. Just want to do what we're doing a little better each year. Not trying to grow, not trying to get big. There's in this business, if you get too big, a lot's lost. A lot of our guests like the smallness of the place. They it's not 100-room Motel 6. It's just a quiet little place. And I think if we had a 100-room Holiday Inn here, I think a lot of our guests who are regular guests wouldn't bother. But I don't know. All I know is I'm happy with what we have, and we just want to make it a little bit better every year.
At breakfast yesterday morning, the group that Bethany and I were eating with felt like they'd been a family for years. They said this was their third year where everybody had come from different parts of the country and met here. And it seems nice that people can build a familiarity with the place and with their fellow guests as well, which is something that you don't always see in terms of travel vacations.
Yeah, people, this it's just odd. It's kind of like at the seashore. A lot of people go to the ocean, go to the shore the same time every year, and if they're staying in a cottage, they get to know the people that are next door. There's a continuity there, and friendships develop, even though the people are from very, very different backgrounds. That's what happens here. We have people who have the same vacation time every year, and they'll spend part of their vacation here, and they just run into each other and develop friendships. And that it's I don't think it's all that unusual. Of course, that's because I see it all the time.
Right. Well, as you say, you have a different perspective here than the places that are cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And subsequently, people's expectations shift because they're coming here and they're building a familiarity with it. At the end of the day, when you look back at the 22 years you've been here and what your day-to-day is like running the inn, what makes you feel the greatest sense of accomplishment with what you're doing here?
It's nice to see the place each year be a little bit different and from a positive standpoint. Each year we are a little bit nicer, a little bit better, but that's looking at the long-range big picture. At the end of the day, I'm happy that we are able to accommodate people, make them comfortable. 95% of our guests are rail fans. So I know they're going to see, if they come here to see trains, I know they're going to do that. They'll see trains. And then all I have to do is make them comfortable while they're here. If we have a good day with a lot of trains and the people are happy and comfortable, that's good. That's very rewarding for me to see people enjoy themselves, be able to help them, tell them where the different places are, give them directions, make their trip a better one, make their trip where they get to see everything, don't miss anything. Don't get back home and somebody's asking them, oh, of course you went to Cassandra, of course you stopped by Portage. And they say, huh, what? Well, we don't want that to happen to our guests. We want to be able to explain to them where the neat places are.
That's such an important thing, to be surrounded in a place that's about trains, supported by people who understand what it means to be a rail fan and how much it means to us to experience that.
Yeah, most of our guests enjoy most of our guests. That is to say, everybody here is a rail fan. And so when you strike up a conversation, there are a lot of common threads immediately available. I give the comparison sort of like this. If you walk into a Hampton and you forgot to turn off your scanner and you're in the lobby at the hotel and the scanner pops off, everybody looks at you like is this guy a cop or is he from the moon or what's going on? You don't fit there. It's like a bird watcher going into the Hampton. He's checking in, and he has 2 cameras hanging from his neck, plus a tape recorder and maybe a video camera. He's loaded down with all kinds of junk, and he's weird. He stands out in the lobby. Now, here, you don't stand out. Here, you're climbing up the steps with a video camera, and when your scanner squawks, there are about 6 other scanners squawking at the same time. They're on the same frequency, and you're not strange. You're a part of the gang automatically. You don't stand out at all. You just fit right in, and that makes our guests very comfortable. For our first-time guests, it's very, what should I say, very comforting to them to not be seen as a weirdo. They climb up the steps and put their luggage down on the porch, and they're surrounded by weirdos just like themselves.
That's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I'd never thought about it quite like that. But it's true. It always feels good to be in a place where you just automatically speak the language.
Yeah.
You automatically know that people aren't judging you. And especially where in our day-to-day lives, we encounter people and we say, oh, I'm a rail fan. Even where they're interested and they want to know more, they have to be indoctrinated. We have to teach them,
right.
And it's like, okay, you don't know the language yet.
Right.
I'll show you a little bit just to give you a sense of where I'm at. But to be in a place where you can walk in and you're already speaking the language, that's really a great feeling.
Yeah.
It's great that you're providing a place for us to be able to do that. Tom, thank you so much for joining us on the Roundhouse today.
All right, Nick.
And sharing your wealth of experience.
Okay.
And I hear an eastbound climbing up, so it's always good to be surrounded by trains.
Yeah, good.
And now, the question of the day.
Last time on the Roundhouse, we were talking about the very interesting story of Barry Scrapyard in Wales, where 297 steam locomotives were sent to be cut up and 213 survived. And I asked you guys what you thought was the most interesting part of the story. And I had a few responses. This one I want to share with you from JF. I believe there was a great story about how number 71,000, Duke of Gloucester, was sent to Barry. According to legend, its waybill was deliberately changed so it could wait at Barry to be saved instead of going to a yard where it would have been cut up straight away. This is also believed to be the inspiration for Reverend Audrey's story of how Oliver the Great Western engine was saved from scrap. Interesting that the Duke was originally on the preserved engines list, but still went for scrap. A railwayman going out of his way to give her a chance to be saved must have been the greatest twist of fate ever. Agreed, JF. That is really an interesting story. All of those locomotives have fascinating tales, and it's great to have seen so many of them survive. Your question of the day for this week is, what is your favorite memory of staying in a hotel or bed and breakfast while rail fanning? Let me know in the comments on the roundhousepodcast.com, where we also have links to all our social media. You can also leave us comments there. Thank you guys for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with somebody today. Spread the Roundhouse. Thank you guys, and remember that the Roundhouse is our house.